Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today's subject will be Yud Tes Kislev. Yud Tes means the 19th day of the month of Kislev. Well, we know that the 25th day of Kislev is Hanukkah, so what's the 19th, 6 days before? It's also a little bit of a holiday, and I will explain it to you because I'm sure most of our viewers don't know anything about it. And of course, that's what I'm here for, to help educate and to discuss different Jewish ideas. Now, this is a story that happened 200 years ago, and this incident is directed at Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi. He was one of the major founders of the Hasidic movement, and he had false charges pressed against him. For example, what do we mean by false charges? Of course, the Rebbe was not a criminal and didn't do anything wrong. And of course, even Torah law says you have to keep the laws of the government, the civil law. So what was he liable? At that time, it was in Russia, 200 years ago. Russia was at war with Turkey, and it's the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, if you're familiar, ruled most of the Middle East, not just Turkey is today, but the whole Middle East, which included, of course, Israel. One of the things that the Rabbi Shneur Zalman said was a good mitzvah to do, as it is today, is to help the poor people of Israel. Many poor people, and if we can say so today, it was even a poor economy 200 years ago. Now it's a thriving economy in Israel. Many of them were paupers. So he said it's a big mitzvah to give money. And not only that he collected the money and gave it over to the poor Jewish people in Israel. The false charge against him, you're helping the Russian enemies, the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. They ruled Israel, you're giving money to them. Oh, same example is, for example, today the Americans are mad at the Iranians, and there's some Jewish people there. And if we collected money and gave them to the poor Iranian Jews, say, high treason, you're helping out the enemies of the United States. It's that ridiculous of a charge, and that was leveled against the Alter Rebbe, which we call him the Alter Rebbe, was because that means in Yiddish, alt means old, and the old Rebbe, he's like the original, one of the original leaders of the Lubavitcher Hasidic movement. So we're going to call Rabbi Shneur Zalman now. We're going to nickname him, which he is known to be as the Alter Rebbe, or the Rebbe. And a Rebbe means a teacher, a personal teacher of the Hasidim. So he was arrested, and the charges, of course, one of the charges was high treason, helping the enemies of the country against Russia. And there's many stories, of course, which I'd love to relate to you now in this show. That at one time, when they were taking the Rebbe from prison to the court, they had a ferry over a little river, a little lake. And this ferry boat took the Alter Rebbe, and when they went back, it was nighttime. Now, there's a mitzvah, maybe many of you don't know about it, but when the moon is getting full, meaning is waxing, some say from the 3rd day of a lunar month, or some say to the 8th month, all the way to the 15th, which the 15th day of a lunar month is a full moon. So while it is waxing, a person is supposed to say a bracha, a blessing. It's called Kiddush Levana, sanctification of the moon. But one of the conditions for this mitzvah is you have to be standing still. You can't be riding. So the Rebbe saw the waxing moon, and he says, ooh, this is a time to do a mitzvah. Beautiful. So he says, but the ferry boat has to stop. And he asked the captain, please, could you stop the ferry boat for a few minutes while I make my blessing? He says, no way, you're a prisoner. I'm doing you a favor, you're a prisoner here. So miraculously, a minute later, the boat stopped. And they didn't know, they couldn't get it moving which way or the other way. They rowed and they tugged. Nothing happened. Another minute went by and proceeded onward. The Rebbe asked him again. Now I'm asking you again. He said, could you please stop the boat? I would like to make the bracha on the moon. No way, he says. I don't listen to orders from prisoners. The boat miraculously stopped again. A minute later, it started. 3rd time, the Rebbe says, now I'm asking you, please stop the boat. And he says, okay. He finally got the message 3 times, and the boat stopped. And the Rebbe, of course, made his blessing on the moon. Now, the previous Rebbe asked this question when he thought about it. He says, "Why, if you needed to be stopped, granted it had to be stopped, as we said, because that's part of the law, but why couldn't he do it the first time, when the boat miraculously stopped?" And this gives us an interesting idea of the philosophy of the Rebbe, that even though that he had great powers, he wanted to do everything in a natural and normal way. It's a basic idea for us, that even though that the Rebbes could do miracles for us, and Hashem, the Almighty, could do miracles, we'd like to things to proceed in a normal way. Now, another story on the Alter Rebbe was when he was in jail, like he was being held. People knew about him. Of course, he was a great rabbi, and he was known in Russia. And some people thought that maybe they had misgivings about this trial. So one of the ministers came to the Rebbe, and he asked him, he was actually a minister of education, he said, "I want to ask you a question." Now, he wanted to ask him a question if this guy was a charlatan, he was some guy making troubles, or was he for real? So he wanted his test was to pose a question. If he could see some interesting idea, he could see there was an educated and a learned person, he could say, well, maybe there were false charges leveled against him, and maybe he should be set free. So this was the question. Now, we all know in the beginning of the Bereshis, the beginning of creation, we all know that Adam, the first man, sinned, and he ate from the tree. Some say it was a fig tree, whatever, he ate from the tree. And the Almighty was mad at him. So, and the story goes on that Adam was running away, trying to get away from the Almighty. And Almighty said, "Ayecho, where are you, Adam?" Now, the Minister of Education posed this question to the Rebbe. He says, listen here, he says, now, we have to say granted and given that the Almighty knows everything and knows where everybody's at. Why did he have this question to Adam? Where are you? Doesn't he know where Adam is? So the Rebbe says, all right, I'm going to give you an answer. The answer is that if the Almighty would come to him, Adam, where are you? He would be startled and stunned, and he would be scared out of his mind, just like a child in a cookie jar. Instead of making a little noise, oh, the mother or father is coming to get them, all of a sudden you say, got you. You'd startle them out of their mind. So you say, you make a little noise, and that they hear somebody is coming. So you didn't want to be startled. So, Minister of Education, well, that's a very good answer, he says, for that, but I happen to know also that there was the Rashi, meaning it was, even though he wasn't Jewish, this Minister of Education wasn't Jewish, but he knew the Bible, and he knew the Rashi, the basic Jewish commentary on the Bible. Obviously, he was a learned man. And he says, well, I happen to know that it's the Rashi's commentary also. I'd like to hear what you have to say. And he says, all right. The Rebbe says, do you believe the Bible is eternal for all times, for all places? The Minister of Education says, I really truly believe that. He says, well, then I'm going to give you your explanation. When a person turns to this and this many years, and he told exactly the number of years as the Minister of Education was, when he turns to that amount of years, it's that the Almighty is asking him a question. Ayecho, where are you? What are you up to now? Have you achieved everything that you have supposed to achieve? Have you accomplished everything that needs to be accomplished? Are you going to proceed onward to new ideas, to new steps, and to new ways of being a better person? And that's the eternal question that the person puts, that the Almighty puts to a person. Ayecho, where are you? Where are you, man? And the Minister of Education liked that explanation, and he, like he touched the Alter Rebbe on his shoulder, he says, bravo, that's beautiful. I really see that you're a very special person, and these charges leveled against you were totally false, and I'm going to put in a good word to the Tsar myself, because he was a cabinet minister, and tell him that this is a bunch of baloney, and there's no rhyme or reason for putting you in jail, and ultimately the Rebbe was freed on any wrongdoing, which of course he didn't do anything wrong, and there was charges leveled against him. Now the Alter Rebbe, one of the things that he wrote when he was released from prison was Katan T, meaning that if you remember that Jacob, when he left Laban's house after 20 years from, you say in Yiddish, a shyster, a trickster, and he had all types of problems from him, but he came out whole, with a big family, a lot of kids, and a lot of wealth. And then he met up with his evil brother Esau, who wanted to kill him, and he also went away from there feeling all right and doing all right. He says, Katan T, I am small. And he says, when a person has something good to them, happen to them, that a person says, well, because I'm great, I'm the best there is, I'm number one. That's really not a Jewish idea. We learned from Jacob, and from the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe actually used this idea also. He says, I've become small. The more kindness, the more chesed that is done with somebody, the more is done to you, instead of saying, yeah, of course, I'm great, I made money, yeah, of course me, why not? I'm the best there is anyway. Person feels humbled because they understand who are they really, how big are they really up to, that they understand that Hashem has made them good things to them. So the closer you come to the Almighty, the more chesed, the more kindness is given to you, and truly your perspective should be how small you really are in the world's eyes, and also into the greater scheme of things, and the infinity of the entire universe. And that's what the Alter Rebbe said when he came out. And he said, even the opponents of the Alter Rebbe, he says, we can't harm them, we can't do anything against them. He says that we're going to have to just teach them that there's nothing to fear from us, we're only doing good things. This is one of the basic ideas with the Alter Rebbe. Today, the Yud Tes Kislev, again, the 19th day of Kislev, is celebrated around the world by Chassidim and Lubavitchers specifically, to celebrate that this wasn't only a physical trial against one, great rabbi. Maybe granted he was great and he was a tzaddik and was righteous, but on the other hand, he was really just a paradigm for the entire Hasidic movement, that they were under persecution, to spreading out the deeper secrets to the Torah. Hasidus, many times we have said this, that was to make Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, accessible to the masses. There was always, Kabbalah really means, which is the word for Jewish mysticism, to receive, to accept, and was handed down all the way from Moses, even earlier than that. Abraham actually devised the book of creation. But on the other hand, what he saw was that it wasn't enough that these mysticism should be hidden, and for special people, that they should really be given to the masses. And one of the problems that the Alter Rebbe once had was he was in a group of other colleagues. When I say colleagues, they were great rabbis in their own right. And there was a page of a manuscript flying around. It was in the gutter. One rabbi says, wow, this is a chutzpah, it's an audacity. Here's deep secrets of the Torah that we're trying to print up, and people don't have any respect for them. It's thrown in the gutter. So what he wanted to say is as follows. He says, the Alter Rebbe says, I'm going to give you an example. He says, the king was a great king, and he had only one son who was the prince, and the prince was dying. Of course, the king, who was rich, called in the best doctors. He says, please examine my child, and please, if you heal him, you're going to be totally well off. You totally have riches. But doctor after doctor examined the prince, prescribed the medicine, nothing helped. And the prince was slowly and surely falling into a comatose state. Finally, one person, the doctor, came from out of the country. They heard the king was going to give a super duper big reward for curing the son and the prince. He says, let me examine the prince. He says, sure. Another doctor could use a different opinion. And examined the prince. He says, I have the medicine that's going to work. Oh, the king says, sure, whatever it costs, we're going to get it. He says, well, listen here, he says, Mr. King. He says, you know the crown jewel in your crown, the most beautiful jewel in the whole kingdom? He says, sure, it's big and large, it's right on my crown. I need that to be crushed up, ground up, made a solution of it, and then we're going to give it to the prince. And that's the only medicine that's going to work. The king was in a quandary. On one hand, without this jewel, what's my kingdom? Is the beauty of my kingdom is this biggest jewel on my crown. On the other hand, who needs a crown? Who needs an empire if I have nobody to give it to? If the prince isn't going to be there? He said, do it. Let's do it. So he took the crown, ground it up, made a solution, and by this time, like we said, the prince was totally out of it. He couldn't even drink, he couldn't have anything. And he took the solution and he just sprayed it, this very, obviously very rich and very expensive solution. He just sprayed it across the prince's face. One drop got into the prince's mouth and revived him, and he was well off. And Alter Rebbe says this is a way a little bit about the Chassidus and the mysticism also. They're very deep secrets, and really they are jewels of ideas. On the other hand, it says if these aren't going to be disseminated amongst the masses, there may not be a Jewish people. The Jewish people will not see to it that they're going to have to be motivated to learn the Torah and to do the mitzvahs. And this is the reason he says that why maybe you're right, the manuscript had to fall in the gutter. People aren't having enough respect for these deep secrets. On the other hand, that we have to understand that this is going to be the only way the Jewish people are going to be revived and going to have to feel some connection for the Torah and the mitzvahs. So this is a few ideas I just want to point out to you about the Alter Rebbe in his personal life. But of course, like we always say, his personal life is not so personal, especially if there's a story that's told about him. That's in order to teach us a lesson. It's another little story about the Alter Rebbe. I know people like stories, and of course I like telling stories, so it's a good match. That one of the Chassidim saw that the Alter Rebbe, when he was taken to jail, that he wanted to daven, he wanted it for Shabbos. He says, Shabbos is coming, you can't travel. It's Friday afternoon, it's getting dark, sunset. So he says, can we, he told the driver again, I'd like to stop here. And he said, well, again, who are you to tell us where to stop? So a horse died. One of the team of horses, again, it was 200 years ago, was by wagon. He died, dropped dead. Well, all right, the drivers weren't put off. They went to another farmer, bought another horse, and they attached it to the wagon, proceeded on, and then the wheel of the wagon broke. They kind of understood again that this was a sign from heaven. They says, all right, let's fix the wheel, but Rebbe, let's go to a place off the road. Let us fix it. He says, all right. There's a big tree over there. It's getting late, and we'll just have some food, and we'll keep our Shabbos under the tree. And that's what he did. And that tree, it was known in Russia even 100 years later. The whole area, the trees were all dead, and this tree was the most beautiful and fruitful and beautiful branches to show you that even spiritually that it expresses itself even in the physical world. And people really knew where that tree was. One of the stories that's interesting to be said was when the Alter Rebbe did come out of jail, he was brought into an apartment. I guess it was a two-story, it seemed like a two-story house. And on one floor was the Chassid. Another floor was called the Masnagid. The Masnagid is the opponent to Chassidim. And I guess the prison guards, wherever they left out the Alter Rebbe, didn't know which apartment was it. They just heard an address. They didn't know first floor, second floor. They brought him to the first floor apartment. They thought that's where the person is, and he brought him to this apartment. And the Chassidim were waiting for the Alter Rebbe. And a long time, it's gone by and by at a time. Finally, they heard their downstairs neighbor yelling and screaming. Maybe the Alter Rebbe's there on the first floor. So they saw him and they knocked down. They heard him screaming the downstairs neighbor, and they banged so hard, and they saw the Alter Rebbe was sitting there. Mustaka got so scared, and he said, "Listen, please don't do anything to me." He says, "We should really give it to you. Who are you to yell at the Rebbe?" And he's screaming at him. When they heard him, "Who are you to change the nusach, the version of the prayers?" And the Alter Rebbe didn't make too many major changes in Jewish life that I can describe here. Would not be major. Of course, the person's not allowed to change the Torah and mitzvahs. A person can tune them up to make them better and to make them more accessible to people. But the Alter Rebbe made like the Shechita knife, the knife that you slaughter cows in, it a better way to slaughter, but you don't change the fundamental basic ideas of Torah mitzvahs, and change a few words in the prayers. And that's really, I mean, if people are not used to it and know about it, wouldn't be a major idea. And the Alter Rebbe says those few hours that he was yelled at by this person while he was making changes was worse than even the days that he was in prison. And another story, when the Rebbe was in prison, that the Tsar himself was very intrigued after we said the Minister of Education who came to visit him. He says, I'm going to find out for myself. And the Tsar came, but he was disguised, because, you know, the Tsar was somebody special. Everybody be on their best honor if they saw the Tsar. But this Tsar used to always do this. He used to dress himself up like a regular person and went around the streets and just, you know, go into the bars or whatever and just get to see what the feelings of the people are. And he went dressed as a commoner to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe stood up in awe. He says, what are you standing up for me? I'm just a common man. I'm nobody special. Ooh, the Alter Rebbe says, indeed you are very special, because when I saw you, he says, I saw the divine presence come in. Why? I've been the Tsar. He says, well, it does say in the Talmud, very interesting thing, the kingdom of heaven is similar to the kingdom on earth. What does this mean? Just like you have awe of of Hashem, the Almighty, so too there's an awesomeness about a leader of a country. And so he had total respect for the Tsar. Later on, when the Alter Rebbe, when there was Napoleonic Wars, and as we all know from our history, and Napoleon invaded Russia, and it was very interesting just to note that there were a lot of Jewish leaders who were very divided. Should they support Napoleon, and they thought they would have more rights under him, or should they oppose him, and they thought he was just a murderer and a fighter, a person who wanted to conquer the world? And the many different opinions, and even amongst the Hasidim themselves. And the Alter Rebbe actually saw that Russia would first of all would be better, even though there was obviously a lot of persecution of the Jewish people at that time. But nevertheless, that he saw that, first of all, in any case, that a Jewish person is not allowed to make a revolution against their country. A person is supposed to support the country and the government where they live. So just to make revolutions against the government is not allowed. So he says, we're going to stick with Russia. And actually, that stood him in good favor, which was near the end of his life, actually, because he made himself an honored citizen. At that time, Russia really understood and respected that he was helping the Russian government, and the privileges were given over to his son, and came in handy when they had to go against the government or ask the government to stop pogroms or whatever, different persecutions of the Jewish people in Russia. Well, it was good to have that special citizenry, but the Alter Rebbe did support the Tsar and did support the Russian government, even though, of course, we all know that they did oppress the Jewish people. Now, the basic work of the Alter Rebbe was the Tanya. The Tanya was an idea of a collection of questions and answers that people asked for a person to serve Hashem better. Now, when we say to serve Hashem better, we're not only talking about quote-unquote religion. We're talking about being happy, for example. It says one of the biggest mitzvahs, best commandments, that's a mitzvah, but not really a mitzvah. What does that mean, a mitzvah, not a mitzvah? Is to being happy. It's not really one of the 613 mitzvahs, but it's the biggest thing of all. And one of the worst things that you could do is depression, which is really not officially a sin in its own right. And for this, that the Alter Rebbe in his Tanya gave some examples of how a person should feel happy, even though the circumstances maybe wouldn't lend to such a happy state. And there are three different advices. One, a person has to understand that there is a next world, that the world to come is a truer world. And maybe circumstances mean that things are bad in this world, but ultimately, at the higher level of expression will come into the next world of godliness, and just sit tight and it'll happen. A more immediate thing for a person to know that this is the scouring of their sins, that they know that something is good happening When something's bad really happening to them, they seem to be because this is an atonement for their sins. And the third way, in the highest level, is that this is a test. When something bad's happening to a person, that they understand that whatever happens to them, that it's an obstacle in their way. And to overcome this obstacle, to overcome this challenge in their life, all they have to do is stand up against it, saying, well, I don't care. I know it's really bad and it's not going to make a difference to me. And because of that, they will overcome and be bigger, and the obstacle will go away. Now, I ask you to try this if you want. You see something's hard and it's challenging. If you stand up to it, you don't get depressed and you don't fall back. You're saying, well, I'm going to do it anyway. The obstacle will fall away also. And this is just one of the many, many ideas that the Alter Rebbe taught in his Tanya. A little bit about his background, his liberation to teach the best things to people, his ultimate liberation, and then the well springs, which we call the living waters of his teachings, really did spread out even to the far ends and to the outside, where it was accessible for everybody, the masses, and remember the Gentile world itself, that many of the ideas that was given over to the Alter Rebbe from heaven were given ultimately over to everybody, to they should enjoy and that they should learn from. And therefore today, in conclusion, that Yud Tes Kislev, 19th day of Kislev, is called the Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah, we all know, is the first day of the year, and that happens around September. But there are different Rosh Hashanahs. For example, people say, well, that's where. How many Rosh Hashanahs can you have? How many New Years can you have in one religion? There's one in China, and there's one in Jewish, and one's in, but how many? You can only have one. Well, that's not true either, because look around you, just in your own civil life. He says, if I say, when's the New Year's? Well, maybe you'd say January 1st. I says, well, when's the beginning of the school year? You say, well, it's around September. You say, well, if a person has a business, when's the beginning of your fiscal year? And they say, well, maybe it's July 1st or whatever. It's a different time. So we do see, even in our everyday life, there are different beginnings of New Year. So Yud Tes Kislev, even though it's a few days before Hanukkah and way past September, nevertheless, it is the beginning of the new year, a new energy that a person can go into, and feeling that the Alter Rebbe was freed and liberated, and to teach us and to have an enjoyment for us, for Judaism, and to understand Jewish education, whatever Torah has for us to offer, and that we should be happy and joyous on this day of Yud Tes Kislev, on 19th day of Kislev, for a simple reason that we're enjoying it also. Again, I've said this many times in Judaism, we're not hero worshiping. Oh, the baseball player, watching a baseball player doesn't make you a better baseball player just sitting around. But if we take lessons from our sages and our rabbis, we could truly understand that it's something for us to learn and enjoy. And hopefully we said a few stories today, but there were beautiful lessons that could be learned from their working in natural means. And we said, and being proud of and going on and further and seeing what your achievements are, just a few of the many ideas that the Alter Rebbe taught, and hopefully we'll be enjoy and learn from his ways also. Thank you very much.